necessary. It's just how do people otherwise decide between, you know, two photographers or two hairdressers or two shops that they want to get greeting cards from? If you don't give it a personality and a different take on things or how you're doing things, then people start deciding who to go with and who to buy from based on price, and we don't want to go there. You never want to compete on price, because that's the worst and the hardest kind of competition to get into with other businesses. If you're just going into a price war, it's not about the value you're delivering anymore. It's just about the bottom line, and that's not really where you want to go.
No, and that goes back to something you said earlier that I think is so true. It is being the right fit for each other when it comes to the kind of client relationship. And I think when I started out, and a lot of people maybe make this, if you want to call it a mistake, when they start out, you'll take any work that comes to you. And I know I was like that when I started. I wanted to build a portfolio. And even if I could tell that maybe something wasn't quite the right fit or wasn't really the style I like to do, I would take that work because I needed to build my portfolio. And it was okay. I mean, there were no big disasters out of that. But as time went on, I realized that if I only took on the type of work I love to do and work with the type of clients that I love to work with, I was so much happier. And it was a much better relationship because we just got on. You end up feeling kind of more like friends than, you know, that kind of client relationship. And it just makes it, everybody gets more out of it that way, I think, if you have that, what can we call it? You have that kind of rapport with each other and it feels natural.
Yeah, it's also, if I learned one thing as a tour guide, I mean, I learned a few things about customer service, for example, but if I learned one thing, and also in running my own business and working with clients, if people don't value it, like if they don't see the point in it, you will never get to the point where both of you are happy with what you've done. So if somebody doesn't quite get why you're doing certain things, or he thinks, in my case, like, oh, I don't like marketing, but I have to do it. That's not really easy. You will never get against that. You will never get over that. So you're working, you know, you're working really hard to convince or to get results or just do everything to make the client happy, but he will never be happy, he or she. And the same as in the tour guiding, it was always the guests on the tours that were the most high maintenance that would then just turn away and not even say thanks. So it's a little bit like that. That's definitely a lesson I've learned, saying the whole, if it doesn't fit, just walk away. I mean, if you feel like this is not a person who will ever understand how I do things and why I do things, or will never see the value in it, then there's nothing much you can do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think as we all go on in business, you do tend to kind of niche down. Or I've noticed that, you know, and almost everybody I speak to says the same thing. You start out and you maybe have an idea of where you fit, and then that gets narrower and narrower. And it's scary because you're lessening your sort of target pool of clients or your target market. But at the same time, everyone you work with likes your style. You like that type of work. Even personality wise, I find that kind of the more, what you said before about putting your personality out there, the more I do that, the less times I get inquiries through that aren't a good fit. Because what I'm putting out there, if people don't like it, they already kind of know who I am and what I do, and they just don't get in touch in the first place.
Yeah, I noticed that quite a lot, because over the years I don't know how many versions of my website, obviously, because you do rewrite. It's a work in progress. It's never finished because it evolves with you and the business. So at the beginning, I just put it out there, and at the beginning it was a scattergun approach. So I think my tagline was marketing, copywriting, and tourism, because obviously I kind of was I was casting my net wide to see what I catch. And it might have been a good idea even going into marketing for tourism business who want to target the German market. I just didn't know the industry and the market like that. But over the years, I learned things. I have it now on my website, the information that's on there and the way I put it out there. Like, for example, I have my rates on my website, because I think I wouldn't contact somebody if I don't know if I have to have that really awkward conversation of, oh, well, that's really nice, but I can't afford that. So I put my rates on there, my prices on there for quite, you know, my hourly rates, and a few examples as well of project rates and everything. And since then, I had only like really serious inquiries. I never had that awkward conversation anymore because people were knowingly getting in touch. They knew what they were getting into. I added information about what I do and what I don't do, because I had quite a lot of people who were mixing up things. Because obviously, if you don't have a background in marketing or anything related to it, you might not know that PR is something else, or that sales or business development are different things, which, to be honest, even, you know, as marketers and business developers and salespeople are still arguing about. But it's just quite helpful to put out there what you do and what you don't do. I also, it's not just like, oh, I do pay-per-click or I don't do pay-per-click. It's also, I only work with you together. I don't want people who just shove it off over to me. I'm not a glorified marketing manager, basically, or an outsourced marketing manager. So just putting these things out there, I learned over the years what people I didn't want and what people I want. And I just put it on the website. And since then, yes, I probably have less inquiries, but the ones I do get are really, really good. And that makes such a difference, just to just adapt it and tweak it as you go along.
No, and it's interesting you say that. I was listening to another podcast a little while back, and that was one of the main things that they said when they started saying what they don't do, rather than just saying, I want to work with you, but actually I don't like to do these types of things, or, you know, that's not what I excel at, or however you want to word it. And that does make a big difference. And you're right, maybe you get less inquiries through, but you're not getting inquiries through that don't fit with what you want to do. Almost everything that comes in is going to be a genuine inquiry, people who are ready to invest in their business and who are probably a good fit for you and what you do. So in the end, that's better anyways, because those people aren't, I don't want to say wasting time, but you know what I mean? Neither side is wasting time.
It's also, I think people, my impression at least, is that people do value and appreciate your honesty, because if I tell them I can do this, but that's not what I do, but I always follow up with, but I know somebody who does. Like, yes. I will never leave them in the lurch. And I've had people come back to me and just said, okay, so if you don't do this, what do you do then? Because obviously, again, their perception of what a copywriter does or a marketer does, or what the difference is. And I think people really appreciate you helping them out and being honest about it and saying no if you just can't help, because I certainly got quite a few clients from other people, like web designers, web developers, or anything, where people just didn't say what they don't do or what they're not good at. And then, you know, a year later, they say, well, I paid all this money for this website and it doesn't do anything. So I think it works if you're being honest, if you're open, and I always help them out in some way. If I can't help them, I point them in the direction of a few people, a few freelancers in my network that I know might be able to help. I leave it up to them as well, because again, we're going back to that whole kind of, you need to, you know, like each other, you need to click in order to work together. I would never force a designer or a copywriter or photographer or anything onto my clients. I always give them the contacts and make them do the decision. And I just introduce them, because obviously they're from my network anyway. I've worked with them before. I get along with them anyway. They need to find out what they want. And that's the main thing. But yeah, saying no, or being honest about, like, my experience with this is, you know, not good. I wouldn't recommend it, but we can try it. But, you know, I'm the first one to tell people, not sure if this works. We can definitely try, but these are the risks, and take that into account. And I've never had any bad experiences with it.
No, I think you're right. People value the honesty, and they value the experience too. Because if somebody's coming to you for help with their marketing or copywriting, or if somebody's coming for me because they want new photos for their website or social media, it's because they don't have the skill set, or don't feel that they have the skill set to do that as well as you or I could. And they do, I think people do trust you. They trust that you know what you're talking about, and that you have that experience, and the transparency about, you know, these are the things I do, these are what I don't do. I can recommend people you know, who do that style or who can offer that service. It just makes you look more professional, because you are admitting, I specialize in these things, and if you're looking for this, then I can send you over here. I mean,
they were looking for help, and you're still helping them finding somebody, or at least knowing a little bit more now what they're actually looking for. So that's the main thing. You're not turning them away, or you're not just, you know, blocking them.
Yeah, and I think, apart from helping them, and that will make them think of you more professionally. And as you're saying, these people are coming back to you and saying, okay, but do you do something else that you could maybe help me with? Or perhaps they speak to a friend who also has a business who is looking for someone who does what you do, and they pass your name on. And these things always come back to you. It's the same if people get in touch and want really corporate headshots. I don't do that. I've tried doing it. It's not my thing. And I'll just be honest and say, listen, that's not my style. It's not what I do. But I know 2 or 3 photographers who are great at it. And often then those photographers will reciprocate to me. And if somebody's looking for something a little bit more modern or candid or relaxed, they'll send the work back my way. So it works both ways. You help your client, and you kind of make a name for yourself as somebody who values community over competition in your industry as well.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's easy to memorize. The more people who understand what I do or how that differs from my competition, for example, the better. And it's the same for what I said earlier with, don't just say you're a photographer or a marketing consultant or web designer. Say, how are you doing it? Why would I pick you over the others? Because the more memorable it is, then when somebody actually asks them like, I run a restaurant and I need a photographer who's good at, making my food look really, really tasty. Do you know somebody? You don't just have to have a long list of, well, I know photographers, but I don't know if they do this, if they have any experience in this. They will immediately think of the person who's the food photographer above them all, has been doing this for years, and, they share really, really yummy photos on their Instagram or anything like that. So everything where you hone it down to a niche, where you're basically making a profile for yourself for a specific product or service, the more people will remember you once somebody asks them, so do you know anybody? Or, you could do this. I've seen a friend of mine is a photographer who does food photography, and I've seen him really do great things, and it was in the kitchen, and it was that kind of perspective, and maybe that's something for you too. So you're basically having them be your marketing and salespeople out there, and just championing your business and your services for you, because you made a good contacts, you made a good connection with them, you helped them in the past, or you just had a good chat. I mean, often enough, I get business from people who I just get along with. I made more friends through networking than for anything else. I mean, especially when I moved here and didn't know anybody. So that's really the main thing. You're not closing doors. You're opening, the door, or making the door wider in one direction, and closing a few that you don't really care about anyway.
Well, and that kind of can bring us around to talk a little bit more about starting business off in a new country, because I know we both said that people ask us about that loads. What's different about running a business in Scotland than for me in Canada, for you in Germany, or what did it take to set up a business here? So you just mentioned networking. That was huge for me. I think had I not kind of put myself out there and went out and met other people, I don't know if I'd still be running my own business. I think I maybe would have got discouraged and given up.
The same here. I didn't know anybody. I mean, after the initial 2 weeks I was in Edinburgh, I spent maybe 3 or 4 times, like a week or 2 weeks here, in order to, meet with people, try to make some contacts. But none of these people I knew was freelancing. None of them run their own business. So they didn't have any. One of them was a graphic designer. So at least he had a similar background to me, but that was it. None of them knew anything about networking. So I had to start from scratch. And again, I moved here in 2010. So that was just after the credit crunch. There was loads of marketing, PR, and salespeople out there who were starting to, freelance or just be consultants. And they all had the advantage of, they went to university here. They lived here for years. They had colleagues they could, kind of go back to. And a lot of them got a lot of business in the first couple of years through those contacts. I didn't have any. And without networking, I don't think it would have ever hit off. It's the main thing still that I get. So right now, after all these years, my networking is basically giving me about 50 to 60% of my business. That's either from contacts I made years ago or new contacts right now. And the other half is my blog, because obviously once I started blogging regularly, and I've been doing this since 2013 now, I also got into SEO and on-page SEO, optimizing it with keywords and everything. So the other half of my new business is actually just generated through Google, without me paying anything for advertising. So it just comes through searches and everything. So that's really good. But in the beginning, I didn't have any of that. And I started out, I think, similar to you, the whole business gateway workshops and everything, because I mean, some of them were just self-affirmatory, I think, because I went to a course that was about how to set up a consultancy or how to do marketing. It wasn't anything new, but it really, really helped to put myself into the position of my own business. I was able to do the marketing for somebody else.